Welcome, folks. Welcome, welcome. So nice to see you and coming into the room as always. And welcoming all of you humans and also any animals around you who'd like to participate or observe today. This is an interspecies service, and we hope that that actually is beyond what we're showing and what we're seeing and what we're listening to today. So if there are any animal companions around you, feel free to see if they'd like to come a little closer and listen on in today. And welcoming in that spirit our guest from the more than just human world today. Let's see if you can identify who this is. Now, admittedly, this one may be a little difficult because this being doesn't actually vocalize. So what we are hearing is the sound of someone recording them. It's an octopus. About 70% of an octopus's brain is devoted to vision, compared to roughly 50% in humans, which might explain why they don't vocalize as much as we do. I don't know. It's a curiosity I have. But today we're revering octopuses, and I'll share more about them and their intersections with spirituality and advocacy in just a few moments. Welcome to the Compassion Consortium. I'm Reverend Sarah Bowen, and I'm joined today by co-founders Reverend William Melton and Victoria Moran, as well as animal chaplain Jen Baker and our irreplaceable techie Phil. We've long been awaiting Altamush for our special spiritual guest, and I'm delighted to announce he's here with us today in a creative way. And Dave Simon, the chair of our advisory board, is back with us today as well. In order to ensure that we don't have disruptions during the service, we've turned off most of the Zoom sharing functions, but we look forward to seeing you and hearing your voices later during our small group fellowship time. We meet for Sunday service on the third Sunday of every month, and if you're new to us, welcome. We're an interfaith, interspiritual, and interspecies community. If those concepts are new to you, I will invite you to read more about our approach and philosophy with a link I'll put in the chat in just a few moments, which is compassionconsortium.org/about for those of you who are listening today on the replay. At the beginning of each service, I offer some sort of acknowledgement of the beings of a habitat I'm currently in or have just been in. And I just got back from Oxford, England, which has a mix of urban and meadow, wetland, woodland habitats, and is home to, to many creatures, including the European hedgehog, the red kite, skylark, European badger, the stag beetle, European water vole, and the so-called slow worm. Has anyone ever seen a slow worm? It's a legless lizard common in meadows and gardens. Pondering that name quite a bit. Yes, it was time again for the Oxford Center for Animal Ethics Summer School with animal theologians and ethicists Andrew and Claire Lindsay. And this year, scholars from around the world presented papers about the ethics of animal captivity and engaged in important discourse. What was most notable for me to bring back to you was the number of presentations on the problems in aquaculture, the ocean version of terrestrial or land-based animal agriculture. In fact, one evening's panel of speakers proclaimed that aquaculture is the next moral frontier, which brings me back to octopuses. And yes, that's the right way to commonly reference plural octopus, although octopi might want to roll off your tongue as it does off of mine. Or you could use the official Greek and call more than one of these beings octopodes. Octopodes. Victoria and I have been saying that all morning. Folks, if you're not aware, octopuses are in grave trouble. Pun intended. It has not always been that way, though. For millennia, cultures regarded octopuses with awe and wove them into sacred stories. In Hawaii, they are known as heye, and sometimes described as the lone survivors of a previous world, ancient witnesses to creation who carry deep ocean wisdom. In the Mediterranean, the Minoans painted octopuses on their sacred pottery. Meanwhile, in certain Pacific Northwest coast indigenous traditions, the octopus appears as a powerful undersea guardian who's respected and even feared for their strength and intelligence and their role in maintaining balance among marine life. Across continents, people have sensed that the octopus is not merely an animal, but some sort of being from the mysteries who defies boundaries. With no bones, they can create infinite shapes, right? Becoming seemingly liquid in form. Moving with intelligence that's unfathomably complex, octopuses are an embodied reminder that consciousness takes many forms. In the stories of our ancestors, the octopus wasn't a mere curiosity, though, but an invitation to practice a few things: humility, respect, and wonder. But that reverence has been eroded by commerce and consumption, by research and testing. Octopuses face many human-made challenges: fishing and habitat loss from ocean warming and acidification, all this stuff, folks. And most troubling of all, the emerging practice of octopus factory farming. Have you heard of this? Aquaculture aims to mass produce octopus meat. So keeping solitary, intelligent beings in barren tanks and feeding them in ways that deplete other marine life, because they're carnivores, and in the end, slaughtering them. For creatures that thrive on exploration and problem solving and solitude, confinement in that treatment isn't merely unkind, I think. It's a profound betrayal of their nature. In 2022, the UK's Animal Welfare or Sentience Act officially recognized all vertebrates and certain invertebrates, including octopuses, as sentient animals. And what's more, they also extended some legal protections, not as many as we might like, but some legal protections. Yet in the US, would it surprise you to know, octopuses are not even considered animals by the federal government, nor protected in any way within the Animal Welfare Act. So here's what I've been thinking as we start today. How can we help humans remember what our ancestors once knew? That an octopus can be a sacred neighbor, not a resource to be exploited. Here's what I've come up with. First, there's a set of legal actions and bills that are trying to halt commercial octopus farming. And consider whether you might want to sign and share the Animal Legal Defense Fund's petition to ban octopus farming, or the World Animal Protection's Octopus Act. It's an acronym. I'll put the links in the chat and you can check that out more. And second, I think we can help people cultivate awe. People are more likely to want to protect animals they feel awed about. We have some research on that. So invite someone to watch My Octopus Teacher or Secrets of the Octopus with you. This holiday season, gift a book like Soul of the Octopus, Remarkably Bright Creatures, or God is an Octopus, Loss, Love, and Calling to Nature. And here's a really creative way. Immerse people in Maggie Roberts' guided meditation, Becoming Octopus. I would play that today for you, but it's about 12 minutes long. So I'll put that link in the chat, and you can check that out as an interspecies practice sometime this month. Yes, folks, I think together we can let our activism and our awe inspire change. Jen and William, over to you.
At the beginning of each Sunday service, we remind ourselves of the tenets of agreement, which this community strives to uphold. Each month, we focus on one tenet, and this month it is tenet number 7, and it will be read by Compassion Consortium founder, Reverend William Melton. As William reads the words out loud, we encourage everyone to take time to contemplate how the tenets can impact and influence your daily life. If you are unfamiliar with all 10 of our tenets, please read the full list at the link just placed in the chat.
So this is actually number 7, which I'm going to share with you now. We endeavor to eat and live in a kind and substantial manner, living away from animal foods and animal-derived clothing as well as any activities that harm us to our fellow beings, human or otherwise. Thank you.
So just take a moment to mindfully meditate on this idea. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Jen. I'm busy putting all of those links in the chat that I promised to all of you. And thank you, William, for reminding us why we're here and what we're doing here. Each month, we also bring you a practice to practice in the hopes that it provides you a chance to rejuvenate and restore your energy, attend to emotions, increase your resilience for the advocacy that you do, or to help make connections with animals. And over the next few months, we're looking at peer-reviewed research shared in scientific journals to see how practices can impact how people respond to animals and whether these practices can change the way people act toward animals. So today we're going to ponder that attribute of awe. A number of studies suggest that awe can impact environmental concerns and actual behaviors of people. I was unable to find a practice about listening to octopuses, perhaps unsurprisingly since they don't vocalize, but I did find some interesting research on listening to whales. A 2025 study published in the Journal of Environmental Psychology suggests that listening to the ocean can have an impact on behavior. This study looked at wild whale encounters off the shore of Australia. As people learned more about whales, the boost in knowledge strongly supported pro-environmental actions. Now, as those people experienced awe, their feelings of connection increased and their intentions to undertake actions on behalf of the environment or change their habits increased. Now, as animal advocates, there's a lot we can critique about sea-based encounters with free-living animals, for sure. But here's the interesting part of the study for me. The researchers found that hearing recorded whale soundscapes, also sparked feelings of awe in people, which in turn made them feel more connected and more likely to act in eco-friendly ways. So awe, learning, and listening to the sea all work together to inspire care for the ocean. I'm curious whether it could help inspire people that we work with to care about individual species or even individual animals. So I take a few moments here to ask you to take a few deep breaths and settle comfortably in your seat. And we go into practice for about 2 minutes. And you can let your eyes go away from the screen, close them if it's comfortable to you, or just kind of let them fuzz up on something. And we're going to listen to East Australian humpback whales for about 2 minutes. And see how that feels. See if that inspires anything within you. So notice if anything came up for you in that short amount of time. We'll put this practice on the YouTube. Phil always does, in case you want to try that with someone, or honestly, just go to YouTube and type whale sounds. Interestingly, I have a cat who has some trauma, shelter, nervousness, had some things happen to him that he didn't enjoy, I think. And he loves whale sounds. I don't know why, but Deacon loves whale sounds. So perhaps this practice is also truly interspecies and not just about humans listening. Think about how you can incorporate the sounds of habitats and the sounds of animals into your advocacy and activism. And think about how inspiring that feeling of awe about specific species or specific animals may lead people to changes that are pro-habitat and pro-animals. How can we use video and audio in ways that create encounters people can have with animals that don't actually infringe on wild animals out in their habitats? I'm holding a lot of curiosity about the ethics of that this month. For those of you who want to read the study, I'll put the link in the chat. And without further ado, over to you, Victoria. I'm so excited about your interview this month.
Hey, everybody. I'm excited too. I had the camera off for a minute because I want to put Altamush's info in the chat. And there's so much to put. I mean, this person is incredibly accomplished. So he's not with us today in person because he lives in Pakistan, which is, I believe, 9 hours later than New York City. But I did do pre-record on that. So we'll be hearing from him in just a moment. And frankly, because that was a couple of weeks ago, I don't remember how much I introduced him then. So I'll just give you a little run through about Altamush Saeed, whom we have thanks to Reverend Sarah. Because did you meet him at Oxford, Sarah, or was it one of these other fabulous things you do?
Altamush shows up everywhere. I've seen him at Oxford Center for Animal Ethics. I've also seen him at the Humane Society annual conference. So he really kind of does the gamut of different audiences and places he can do his advocacy, which I really appreciate. So I'm glad you had a great conversation.
Well, and he does things that are late at night too, because he was at the Interfaith Vegan Coalition Zoom meeting last week, which was later than this. In any case, for those of you who don't know Altamush Saeed, he is Muslim, and this is our interfaith part of the program, so we'll be hearing from him about that. He is also an animal rights and environmental lawyer. He is the founder of Pakistan's first international animal and environmental rights conference, and we'll put all this in the chat, and without further ado, we'll actually get to hear him, because he's pretty cool. Hello, Compassionists. It's unusual that we pre-record. Usually our special spiritual guest is live with us, but sometimes we have to make a concession to people who are coming from far, far away. And that's what's happening today because our special spiritual guest is joining us from Lahore, Pakistan. So how did we find him? Well, it was Reverend Sarah who found him on all of her many travels around the world. I believe that they have met 3 times at various conferences and at the Oxford Animal Rights Summer School. So we are so, so pleased to be welcoming today Altamush Saeed, who is an interspecies justice lawyer and activist. He founded Pakistan's first environmental and animal law firm and also Pakistan's first International Animal and Environmental Rights Conference, which happened this year and will be happening again in 2026. And oh my gosh, he's done so many other things. So you can read all that in the chat and on the website. But now let's get to the conversation. Welcome, Altamush.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. Just when you were telling me before we started to record that you're an interspecies justice lawyer and activist, how did that start? Where did that come from?
Oh, it came actually my whole life, and I'm not sure if this is true, but I call it fate. And I personally believe in it, and it has happened in phases. So the thing is, and I'm getting more clarity as I age, basically. The thing is, I mean, if you're in high school, God or somebody else would not give you PhD level information because never get it, right? So it happens in stages, and that's how it happened to me in my life as well. When I was like really young, when I was 14, I started working on human rights issues, and that's kind of the most visible, concern here in Pakistan because, as you may have heard, human rights abuses are so high here. For people to see animal rights and environment rights is kind of really hard, and I don't blame them for it. And if a genuine person is trying to do something, they will almost always start with human rights work. So as a kid, the first thing that I did was I started a soccer tournament. I love soccer, and we used that to eradicate drug abuse in our community. So every kid was playing soccer instead of drugs, and it took us 5 years. Eventually, I founded my own nonprofit, and I've been running it here in Pakistan. And later in 2018, when I was still a law student, I was rescued by a cat. She came into our lives, and she physically, she mentally rescued us, and while we physically rescued her, she went out. I didn't understand spay neuter back then. She came back, had 5 babies. They're all with us, so big family. And that was 2018. And yeah, so they teach us every single day, and my cats are kind of my mentors. And that's when the animal rights work started. I started filing petitions when I was a student. I wanted to shut down the zoo in my city. I'm still trying, but then later, COVID happened, and we led a nationwide project to help humans and animals. Essentially, we started with dogs because that's like the most visible animal here in Pakistan. We started food drives for them because during COVID, as you can imagine, with the markets and everything closed, most of them rely on leftovers. So I felt that they needed food as well. That was a very tiny effort, which is still ongoing. Eventually, the floods happened in Pakistan, which was really, really bad. One third of my country was underwater. Per the official data, over 1 million farm animals died, and 1,700 human beings died, and it was a lot of catastrophe. But and that's when the environmental part came into the mix as well. However, if you have seen my CV, and I still call it fate, I somehow ended up with a master's in each of these disciplines separately: human rights, international law, animal rights law, and environmental law. And I always wanted to do this, and that's last year I was doing an internship with a very kind person. You might know her. Her name is Dr. Hope Firdoshian. She works at Phoenix Zones Initiative in the US, and she founded this term called interspecies justice. And I felt that's what I've been doing my whole life. So I worked with her very briefly, and she's trying to, create this space, and me as well now, where, where planet, where everybody is welcome and where everybody thrives. And that's kind of the goal of my life at the very least, to make the world a better place for all life, humans, animals, and the environment, and all that exists. And that's what interspecies justice essentially means. So every project that we do has to have these three components, because normally when we try to do something, we're taught to think in boxes, and that's been the education system that I went through. I hope you didn't go through it, but because of the anthropocentric perspectives and everything, we're only taught about a certain part of life, that is human beings, which is okay, but everything else which is more than that is missing. And I felt that didn't make any sense to me. And you would be amazed, but animals and the environment actually brought me closer to my religion as well. I'm a Muslim. And that's when I started researching about veganism, how it interacts with Islam and everything. And initially, I heard was that it is incompatible because nobody had any research. Nobody knew how to interpret the verses of the Quran and everything. But I did a lot of research, and I met some very, very kind people. And I work with them at a small or big organization actually now of vegan Muslims from across the world. They're called Green Islam. And together we're trying to, advocate and champion for this cause, and bring vegan Muslims together, who are very few across the world, as you can imagine. But there's 2 billion Muslims, and we need a message that interacts and understand, and that is something that they can resonate with. So eventually, and this is happening in a couple years' time, we will have the first book in the world on veganism, animal ethics, and Islam. And I'm writing it with some of my other amazing colleagues, Dr. Ali Raza and Bushara, who are all vegan Muslims. And and this ideology is something that I try to apply in everything that I do, and I've done some stuff, I would say, but it's definitely creating some space for all of these things to come together. Because if we miss one of them, we're jeopardizing not only their rights but our own as well. So it's common sense, and that is something that I found the religion of Islam filled with as well, but a lot of people don't know it, and it is not taught and it is not preached. Therefore, one of our very new projects is where we're teaching imams directly, who are the faith-based leaders in Islam, as you know about them, just like pastors and priests, and in the Christian religion and so on and so forth in other religions. We're directly training them on human, animal, and environmental rights together, because I felt it would be unjust for me to only teach them animal rights as well, even though, that's what I want them to understand, but it has to come in a mixture. Because the thing is, if you don't do that, then you're creating boxes again. So all the amazing animal rights people need to understand that there's an intersection with environmental rights and human rights. And so do the human rights people and the environmental rights people as well. Because the people who are doing harm to us are not part of any of these movements. And it is benefiting them that we're isolated, that we're separate, and we do not collect this collective thought. And I feel when that really happens, that's when the world will change, and I believe in it. And so that's what I would say with interspecies justice, to qualify a bit about, like, it's a very big definition, but that's what I get so far.
Oh,
I hope
you've
that
given
makes sense.
so much hope that it's absolutely thrilling. So for those of attending and listening to this later who really don't know anything about the belief system of Islam, the basic tenets, can you help us out? And I know in such a short time that's always such a ridiculous question to ask about any religion, but just pretend we're 4 years old and tell us what we need to know.
So it's actually the hardest to teach 4-year-olds. So you've given me a very hard challenge. But the thing is, the very basic concept of Islam is actually mercy. And that's in different religions, it's a different word. For example, ahimsa is a very common word, but in Islam, it's just Rahman or Rahim, basically, which basically means mercy. And it is written in the Quran, which is like the holy scripture in our religion, in one of the surahs, where God has said that I have made it mandatory on myself to be merciful to my creation. It's written in the text. And I was blown away when I read that as well. And there's one other thing. It's basically a hadith, which is basically the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which is the second primary source of the religion of Islam, which is the teachings of the Prophet of how to interpret the Quran, basically. And one of those hadiths, or one of those revelations from the Prophet, was that God, Allah Almighty, has written on His throne that my mercy overpowers my anger. That's written, right there. And and uh, and if you just expand just this tiny principle alone, which is massive, you need to be able to understand that you have to extend this mercy to all life. It's very simple. But the thing is, the way the religion is actually taught is, again, not because of the religion, but because of the anthropocentric perspectives that we have in the world. There's like a hodgepodge happening, and people kind of, misinterpret that, the world in Islam, at least, was only created for human beings, which is extremely incorrect. Because when the Prophet passed away, one of his last prayers, which is in Arabic, it means ummati, ummati, ummati. In English, it translates to the word community. And in chapter 6 of the Quran, the animals are actually referred, and the environment, trees basically, are referred to as community in the book. And because they have their own mechanism of praying. You might not believe this, but the frog, which is actually a very ugly animal to us, was the most beloved animal to the Prophet Muhammad in our religion, because his sound, if you can recall, it's a 24/7 sound that the frog makes his entire life. That's essentially his prayer to God. And the Prophet could see it. So the animals have a different mode of prayer, and the trees do as well. So when you pray, you basically become a subject of the religion. You're no longer an object. And the other cardinal principle of Islam is that everything was given to us as a form of responsibility. It was not given to us for using as the way we want. There were a lot of regulations, and many of them are violated on a daily basis. So, in essence, if you don't understand what to do, you should just apply the principle God has applied to Himself, that it is mandatory on myself to be merciful to my creation. So it is mandatory for every Muslim to fulfill their responsibility given to them by God for the extension of mercy. That's Islam, basically.
Oh, that is utterly beautiful, and I do apologize for the phone. I've all my checklists of how to get ready for these interviews. I missed one of those checks. That's just stunning. And everybody, this is recorded. It's going to be on the Compassion Consortium website and the YouTube channel, so you can listen again and get more of this really, really beautiful wisdom that we're hearing this morning. So you've already talked a little bit about this, but can you expound a little bit more on the Islamic view of animals? Any stories from the Prophet's life that have to do with animals?
Yeah. So this story is actually about a camel that a person was using, and he was not feeding the animal properly, and so the animal was suffering, and the animal was crying, and the animal complained to the Prophet. So the Prophet could understand the speech of the animals the way we cannot do that, and he complained to the animal that this caretaker is not, providing me with enough resources for me to be happy. And the Prophet severely reprimanded the person that don't you ever do this again, because this animal is a creation, and everything he says you will be accountable for at the day of judgment, which is one of the very cardinal principles of Islam. And the other one, of course, the frog story I've already shared with you, which a lot of people don't know about. But I particularly want to talk about this story about a dog, which is kind of, misinterpreted or misunderstood. In Islam, it is considered impure, but there's a direct reference in the book of the Quran that God has actually taken responsibility for one this dog that will definitely go to heaven because he was taking care of some of the most devout Muslims who were being persecuted in a certain area of time. So the animals they will be accountable for, and at the day of judgment they will make their own statements and people will be held accountable for them. So if not that, people should understand that they are a part of the community and they have their own rights, and they're not they're on the planet to for us to use in any way that we want. There are severe regulations that apply to them despite their own lack of speech and everything. So that's what I would share in this very brief amount of time.
That's really beautiful. So I know something that some people are probably thinking about that
Hmm.
we've heard of the Eid al-Adha and the
Yeah.
day of the year that commemorates Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son, but doing something different. So tell us about that and tell us what you do with that as a vegan Muslim.
So that's a very good question, and the way, you know, as you mentioned, is that we're honoring the sacrifice of Hazrat Ibrahim when he offered his son. So the thing is, the way the sacrifice happens right now is that people just go and buy an animal and they sacrifice them on the next day. The thing is, the actual essence of Eid al-Adha was sacrificing a part of yourself that you are so dear, that is so beloved to you, that you're actually sacrificing yourself. And that's what the Prophet Ibrahim did. And that's eventually when he was blessed, that his son was eventually spared. What we do right now is more of a cosmetic measure, and we do not understand how sacrificing this firstly has to be a sacrifice of yourself. It's not just a sacrifice of money. So the actual thought is missing with the way generally Eid al-Azha is practiced right now. It has become more of a ritual, and people are getting far, far away from what the actual act was about. And secondly, there's a verse in the Quran which says that it is not the meat that reaches Allah, it is your piety, which is basically your mercifulness towards others. So if you do have a thought and understanding that you do not want to sacrifice an animal, you can sacrifice a different part of yourself that benefits humanity. So you can set up a school, you can provide food to people that's vegan, or you can do something of the like instead of sacrificing the animal, because the original thought was always about sacrificing yourself. And the other thing is, which is missing from the way this event has to be interpreted, is that the way animal agriculture works right now, at least in the industrial perspective, we both know about, not a lot of people know, is causing harm directly to not just the environment, not just the animals, but humans themselves, which is leading to lots of disasters. 2022, when we had the Great Flood, which actually put one third of Pakistan underwater, and a lot of people were displaced, and it's still displaced because they can never make up the financial loss that they had at that point. That happened also because of this, industrial animal agriculture as well. And in Islam, you're not allowed in any circumstances to do an act that harms another Muslim, which is what you're doing right now. So there's a lot of disconnect when it comes to applying the environmental principle of Islam within Eid al-Adha. So if you understand and acknowledge that, you should move away from this practice because you're actually leading to the deaths of other human beings, which is the more higher principle in Islam that you have to take care of the Muslims first, which is why nobody bats an eye when there is a balancing happening between human and animal rights. But that component about environmentalism is completely missing from this conversation, which is what we're trying to bring into the book. But of course, it is your choice. I cannot force these opinions on anybody, but this is what the religion says.
So, for people listening who are of the Muslim faith, and maybe they've never thought about trying to do things a little bit differently or sharing these ideas with their imam, what
Mm.
suggestions would you have for them?
If they want to share them with the imam, I would say, I mean, firstly, they should be of the Muslim faith. If they're from another faith, they should not do it, because that's just going to attract a lot of harm in a different perspective because of the way colonialism and all the other seas work. So they have to be Muslim first, and then they have to have a good understanding of how human, animal, and environment rights are talked about in Islam. You can find another expert if you yourself don't have that information. And then you have to work with them, give them references that this is what the book says. And do you think if this is something that aligns with my perspective? Because another one of those cardinal principles in Islam is that it is not mandatory for you to eat meat. It's nowhere written in the religion. And it is not mandatory on you to eat plants as well. But when you apply the initial principle that I shared with you, which is of mercy, if you apply that, the most merciful choice to not just animals, but the environment and human beings is to not eat animals. So, so that's something you have to firstly believe in yourself first and then talk to the imam with. Because if you have limited knowledge, it could go elsewhere. And that's why what we're trying is if you have a small community, if you can find someone else to talk this with, you can definitely go to the imam and help them understand these perspectives. And if they agree, maybe they can offer a Friday sermon on this very topic. And that's what we're trying to do here in Pakistan as well, because it's kind of like the law, what they say. And if they say these things, I think a lot of fundamental change within Islam can be brought about.
You are bringing about so much change around the world. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be speaking with you today. So, our time is up, sadly. Do you have a little final word?
Yeah, I have a quote that I wrote a long time ago, but I think it's relevant. So it goes like this, it's just two lines. We only have one life to make a difference, do it today. They only have one life to feel the difference, do it today.
Oh, I love that. So I'm just so happy to know you. You have this wonderful infectious energy, and hopefully there's a lot to that, isn't there? Just the energy, which I think is love coming out through people, and you seem to have a lot of it. So may God bless you in every way, and I hope that our paths will
Yes.
cross in 3 dimensions. Back to Jen and Sarah.
Thank you for that interview, Victoria. That was wonderful. That was just delightful to hear. So it would be nice to learn more too. So thank you.
You.
Um, we'll start with our song of compassion. So during each Sunday service, we offer a song of compassion for your consideration and silent reflection. This month, we listen to Plumes, a French singer-songwriter who uses his distinctive pink guitar to sing for horses. Plumes has captured hearts globally by serenaded animals, cows, horses, parrots, rhinos, even okapis, with soulful melodies. He plays music for all types of animals because he wants to raise awareness about abused and endangered animals and species and make people aware that animals are living sentient beings. He usually chooses love songs because the intent behind the music is important, he explains. Animals can feel it. Through these intimate musical exchanges, Plumes reveals the sensitive and emotional lives of animals, inspiring a deeper appreciation for their welfare. This extraordinary journey not only transformed him into an advocate for animal rights, but also motivated him to embrace a vegan lifestyle. Join us as we observe how Plume's heartfelt songs seem to soothe animals, foster unexpected connections, and encourage a kinder world for all living beings.
You know who I am. You know I can't let you. No, 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 no. Slide through my hands and wild horses couldn't drag me away. And wild horses, you know I can't let you slide through my hands and wild horses couldn't drag me away. And wild horses will ride them someday.
Thank you, Jen. Wow, I don't know where you find these. Just, yeah, so much in there. And Victoria's observation, love coming out through people. I started to wonder if that was love coming out through horses. This is very perfectly timed based on our new ACT cohort, Animal Chaplains. It is the year of the horse. So I suspect we may see some wild horses around here, friends. I don't know, to be continued. So as we close today, a couple of things that we do, prayers and blessings, and we also share a bit of good news. I think actually, Victoria, you shared a lot of good news there with Altamush. Just so much for us to take away there and so much that's useful. But here's a practical piece of legal good news. Arizona recently passed a new animal cruelty law, SB 1658, for those of you in Arizona, which requires medical attention for domesticated animal companions. So beginning in September, it'll close a current loophole in the law that'll allow animal control officers to better help, I suppose is a way to say that, better help animals and people who are in hoarding situations in particular. Although the legislation falls short of a few measures which were originally included, and it's unclear how people living in veterinary care deserts or who lack funding for advanced care will be impacted by this law, there's still work to do. It's a really useful first step. So closing that kind of gap of when people can get involved in situations. So good news? Sounds like it might be some good news. So let's take a moment again to take ourselves back in practice. Just taking a deep breath. Sing to silence for a moment. We'll turn to our blessings and prayers. Today's blessing is a video Phil will bring up in a moment from Animal Chaplain Bonnie West. Tucked away in Bonnie's backyard is a small sanctuary where she reports misfit magic happens. Bonnie shares, it all started with one small pig named Frank and has grown into a safe haven for goats who gossip, pigs who sunbathe like royalty, chickens with diva energy, sheep with secrets, and one donkey who thinks he's charge. And she said, he might be right. He might be in charge. It's a cozy kingdom where every quirky soul has a story and kindness rules the land. Bonnie shares that she's just the humble human trying to keep up with the chaos, the cuddles, the kisses, and to share their mission. That kindness, compassion, and a good dose of humor all begin right in your own backyard. Bonnie, thank you for your contribution to today's Sunday service. It's beautiful, Bonnie. Phil's going to give you all the ability to chat and turn on your videos as I wax poetic for a moment, but I was struck in that by the love and the care and concern. I also wanted to jump through the predator fencing and just hang out with goats for a while, but also by how we name animals. T.S. Eliot has a poem called The Naming of Cats, in which he suggests that cats have three names: the fancy name that we give them, the common everyday name that we give them, and then the name which they alone know and we will never know. So I started wondering what Milton Berle, how Milton Berle refers to himself. and Bowie and all of the other folks who were shown there. So Bonnie, thank you for introducing us to so many beautiful creatures. Do you have a loss, anyone that you need to have attended to? If so, please feel free to put it in the chat. The chat is now open, and you all can also, attend to each other in the chat. This is a community. We're about to move into our fellowship time where we get together in small groups and see what's coming up for us, what came up during the service today, or what's going on in your month. So if you have anything you need to share in the chat, please feel free to do that now. And while you're doing that, Phil, if you could bring up our final blessing slide, that would be great. And I'm remiss. Someone is reminding me that today is Black Cat Appreciation Day. I am definitely remiss. I live with 2 black cats. Thank you so much for that. Friends, if you would join me in these words, which we encourage you to utter aloud where you are or silently in your head. May all creatures everywhere be happy and free. May the thoughts, words, and actions of our lives contribute to this happiness and this freedom for all. And please add your blessing closing word, whether that's may it be so or amen, amin, so mote it be, om shanti shanti, and so it is. Thank you all for joining us for Sunday service. Please stick around after fellowship. After some short announcements, first from Dave, the chair of our advisory board, and then Jen. Dave, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, my friends. What a wonderful program today, as always. Of course, it's not free for us to put these on each month. There are costs in various categories, as you might imagine. But the wonderful thing is that each month, generous people make it possible for us to do it again the next month. So last month, generous people, probably including many of you, donated to make it possible to put on today's program. And today you have the opportunity to pay that forward and make it possible for us to do this again next month. You can take your phone and scan that QR code that Phil has put there and make a donation on the spot. And if you're feeling like being even a little more generous, you could go to compassionconsortium.org/join us and consider becoming a member for as little as $5 a month, less than a cup of coffee. So please consider making a donation or becoming a member. And thank you all so much for being here. On to Jen Baker.
While I read a few announcements, remember Phil has given you all the opportunity to turn on your video cameras if you'd like. We'd love to see all of your amazing faces as we close the service and move into our fellowship time. So please feel free to stick around and join us. And a reminder that Lisa Levinson, Animal Chaplain and Campaigns Director for In Defense of Animals, will be with us in September. Stay tuned to our newsletter for updates on the September service. You can register for next month at the link in the chat. For our Compassionist Circle next month, please join Reverend Sarah Bowen for a discussion on managing anger and getting emotionally unstuck in our experiences to help guide meaningful, productive change at our Circle Spiritual Practice on September 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern. And in our monthly newsletters, we highlight different compassionate actions people in the Compassion Consortium community are taking. If you have a compassionate action you'd like to share, please submit it to compassionconsortium@gmail.com. We'd love to have it in a future newsletter. If you're new and you'd like to learn more information about the Compassion Consortium, we'd love to welcome you to our community. Just go to the link in the chat for our I'm interested form. By becoming a compassionist, you become an important part of helping the Compassion Consortium sustain and grow our mission and community. It means becoming a part of a spiritual community that honors all beings. Rooted in interfaith values, it offers support, connection, and reflection for those committed to compassionist living, including care for animals and the earth. It's a place where advocacy and spirituality come together to nurture kindness and justice for all life. We now offer 3 monthly donation amounts for becoming a compassionist, giving everyone more options to support our mission in the way that works best for them. Join us for Homo Ahimsa Rising, the Whole Planet Spirituality Forum and Retreat at Unity Village, Missouri on October 16th through the 19th of this year. This just in, Reverend Sarah will be on site offering special practices for increasing interspecies spirituality. And don't forget about our monthly recurring gatherings for vegan meditation, activist well-being, and pet loss support circle. Everyone is welcome, and details are always available on our website and in the monthly newsletter.